101.1, The Answer, Doc Washburn Show continues, where you can sound off and talk back at 501 401 1011. Interesting thing happened yesterday, and we have a whole lot of audio we need to get to because the president and Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth did kind of a cabinet meeting / press conference today. And it was about mostly Iran. But I had a question from a guy yesterday who just couldn't understand something. He couldn't understand how is Iran a threat to us? He honestly wanted to know, how is Iran a threat to us? And so I answered to the best of my ability because I have to always keep top of mind the fact that most people aren't like me. Most people have lives. And so they're not down in the weeds like I am all the time. And so maybe they hadn't really thought through. Maybe they don't really know. How is Iran a threat to us? So anyway, here's what the guy said. We'd like to know what threat Iran poses to the United States. And I said, thanks for asking. They and their proxies have already killed over 1,000 Americans since 1979. They told our negotiators they already have enough enriched uranium for 11 nukes, and they're not going to give it up. When they fired 2 missiles at Diego Garcia recently, that proved they've been lying about their capabilities. Their missiles obviously have a range of 2,500 miles. Since we started Operation Epic Fury, Iran has attacked 12 of their fellow Muslim countries, which is odd because they never chanted death to Saudi Arabia. They never chanted death to the UAE, but they sure have chanted death to America. You don't think they mean it? Now, I didn't know whether the guy had responded to me or not. He has, and against my better judgment, I'll read his response. With no warning, without having looked at it ahead of time. But again, that's what people do when they host a talk radio show. It's just like taking a live call from somebody at 501-401-1011, and they may tell the call screener, this is what I want to talk to Doc about. And usually that's what they will start talking to Doc about. But every once in a while, you're doing live radio, they'll throw in something out of left field. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, here's what the guy said. Iran is 7,000 miles away from the United States, so 2,500 miles is no threat. Oh, like the plan wasn't to develop longer range missiles. Buddy, given that Israel will spy on the United States and try to sink one of our ships to encourage us to be in a war with their neighbors, it doesn't surprise me that Israel has cells in other Arab countries. Okay, of course, Israel never intentionally tried to sink one of our ships. So, I mean, I don't know what color the sky is, the sky is in. But anyway, Israel, through their proxy dictator Zelensky, wait a minute, Zelensky's kind of chummy with Nazis. So he's saying that Iranian dictator Zelensky is a proxy for Israel. Okay, great. Wow. Israel, through their proxy dictator Zelensky, has succeeded in completely sacrifice Ukraine while we, the U.S. government, lined their pockets. he doesn't seem to be upset with Joe or Hunter Biden about that, just Israel, because I guess the Jews are the problem for everything as far as this guy's concerned. You failed to explain how Iran is a threat to the U.S. No. I already said they've killed over 1,000 Americans, and they certainly plan on killing more. That to America means what it says. This guy, because they have missiles that could go 2,500 miles, and we're only 7,000 miles, and we're 7,000 miles away, it's like, so no threat. Oh, so they're supposed to wait until they have nukes and wait until they have missiles that could deliver them to the U.S. and then do something. This guy's amazing. And I'm just, no, I mean, I could say his name, but why open him to all the ridicule? Let's see. You failed to mention how Iran is a threat to the U.S. No, I gave it to you in spades. We were lied to go into Iraq over the weapons of mass destruction rhetoric, and this is not even an imminent threat. Okay, Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. If he didn't, he couldn't have used them on the Kurds. And if he didn't, the months that W took to put together his coalition of the willing, and every day, 18-wheelers were going on the highway from Baghdad to Damascus, Syria, and that we wondered years later, well, gee, where did Assad get the weapons of mass destruction used on his own people? I know it's not a popular thing to say, but Saddam had WMDs. Let's see. The fact that they took hostages in 1979 does not even seem to be the same level of threat that Kermit Roosevelt and the CIA perpetrated against Iran in 1953. So he's ignoring everything that's happened since 1979. Huh, interesting. You're about 26 years behind on your history for, in the case of the USS, I guess you mean, or in the case of the USS Liberty, 12 years behind. Yeah, that's been debunked. It was an accident. They apologized. They paid reparations. All of our investigations show it was an accident, but, you know, I guess if you hate the Jews, you hate the Jews. Okay. Well, we have a saying here in the South, and that is, bless your heart. So anyway, let's take a look at some some audio here. I want to start with, okay, I got to go over to Scent. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, we need to get a little bit of this into the no, I'm confused. Okay. Oh, there we go. All right, lots of audio. That's what it was called. So I want to get into the let's start. Trump had a cabinet meeting / press conference earlier today, and he had a lot of stuff to say, as did Marco Rubio, as did Pete Hegseth. And we want to start with Trump crushes the Dems. If we have it.
I don't care about the Democrats. The Democrats hate our country. The Democrats are in chaos right now, and they have no common sense. You know, they have one quality that's amazing. They stick together. And it's harder because they stick together in a ridiculous policy like men playing in women's sports, open borders for everybody, including murderers and anybody else that want it. We're open to you. Come in, murderers. You know why they do that? They do that for a couple of reasons, but they do it for votes because they think they're going to vote for the Democrats, even though I did great with the Hispanic vote, tremendous with the Hispanic vote. You know, I turned that whole thing around. The Hispanics like me and I like them. And, you know, it's interesting with the Hispanics. When I built the wall, everybody said, oh, that's going to ruin us for the Hispanic. It was just the opposite. They know all about immigration, and they know all about death and crime, and they're smart people, and they have common sense. They wanted to be protected from the people that were coming into our country. So, you know, I won the election with a very tremendous Hispanic vote, and I think it's higher now than it was then. So We're a party of common sense. The Democrats are a party of insanity. They're a party that will destroy our country.
Exactly. Now, wait till you hear what Trump has to say about Iran. Wait to hear what Pete Hegseth has to say about Iran. Wait till you hear what Marco has to say about Iran. That is all coming up as the Doc Washburn Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. One 101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. You can sound off and talk back 501-401-1011. It got real. Our first strike on Iran. You know, there's a tendency to say, hey, yo, fam, it's finna get real. No, it got real with our first strike on Iran when out of a clear blue sky on a Saturday morning, a missile took out the Ayatollah and somewhere between 40 and 50 of the top guys in Iran, and we just keep taking them out. All right, at the press conference / cabinet meeting today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio had some things to say.
We were going to destroy their missile launching capabilities. We're well on our way to achieving that goal. We were going to destroy the factories so they couldn't make more missiles and more drones, and that is moving forward. Every single objective the president clearly laid out on the first night of this operation is being effectuated. Again, Pete will speak to the specifics of it. This has been an incredibly successful operation. Every day, it may not get covered because, you know, we're unlike them. We're not bombing embassies and hotels. We're hitting military targets. But every day, The Department of War lets the drummer get wicked over every portion of Iran that has these military capabilities, and the results are going to bear fruit for the world. The world is going to be a safer and a better place when President Trump's mission here is achieved. And frankly, I think countries around the world, even those that are out there complaining about this a little bit, should actually be grateful that the United States has a president that's willing to confront a threat like this and not allow it to continue to persist. Because these people will kill as many Americans as they have a chance to do. And if they have a nuclear weapon, as the vice president pointed out, they could kill millions of Americans in the future. And that is a risk that was not going to continue to exist as long as we had this president.
You know what? And a lot of countries are grateful. A lot of countries are thankful. They might not say it publicly, but off the record, behind the scenes, they're telling the American ambassador to their country, whoever, like, hey, man, appreciate that. You did us a solid. That's pretty cool. All right, next. Can we, this is crazy. Can we play Pete Hegseth cut 2 first? Because I think I kind of got him backwards. And I know it takes a minute to get this thing straightened out because our bandwidth issues today. But if you wouldn't mind playing Hegseth cut 2, that would be fantastic. All right, let's roll it.
Mr. President, you are acting now to ensure future generations do not have to live under the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran. However, you wouldn't know it if you listened to the dishonest hate Trump media, as you referenced. The folks here in the room, these cameras, they have a choice. You're either informing the American people of the truth or you're not. Because I hear it from my people every day. Behind every headline you write, there's a helicopter crew in the air. And behind every news banner you write, there's a battalion on the move. And behind every fake news story, there's an F-35 pilot executing a dangerous mission. My message to the media is get it right.
Well, you know, wouldn't that be nice? No. I am not in any way trying to downplay or denigrate what Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is saying. I'm with him 100%. But you know, just like Margaret Brennan the other day, CBS Face the Nation, who was horrified, was scandalized that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth asked for people to be praying for our military in the name of Jesus. She was outraged. And people are like, well, look, I knew you're a mainstream liberal, but I mean, you really want to appear to be this anti-Christian? See, because hardly anybody knows she's married to. She's married to a Muslim, and he's got his JDs. He's a lawyer. And years ago at University of Miami Law School, he wrote his big paper on how wonderful Sharia law is. And that's who she's married to, and she's the host of CBS Face the Nation. So she's horrified that Pete Hegseth asked for prayers for our military in the name of Jesus. You got to know who your enemy is, and Margaret Brennan, Face the Nation, is part of it. Okay, so the other cut from Pete Hegseth.
Many of the Iranian military factories and bases that we're systematically destroying were paid for by the pallets of American cash that Barack Obama flew into Tehran under the Iran deal. You might call it an inconvenient truth. Iran took our money and turned it into weapons and bunkers and ammo. And now we're destroying those weapons, and you're writing, Mr. President, that grievous wrong. And make no mistake, we had to act. And our objectives are clear: no nukes, no Navy, and a complete dismantling of their missile program and defense industrial base. And as Marco pointed out, that mission, and the VP as well, has not changed since day one.
Buddy, he's on fire. He is on fire. And I'll never forget, a good friend of mine, a Vietnam veteran, when Trump picked Hegseth, he's like, well, I don't know, man. I don't know if he's got the experience. The jury's out. All this time later, he's like, yeah, Trump got the right guy. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I like giving the president credit when he makes a good appointment. And Pete Hegseth is doing a great job. Marco Rubio is doing a great job. No, I don't want to talk about the AG, okay? I'm sorry you brought it up. No, I was in Florida when she's AG there. I don't want to discuss that today. Today is an uplifting, upbeat. We're happy. We're getting a lot of things done. Please just hush about Bondi. Okay, next. Want to go to Trump on Iran cut one at today's cabinet meeting.
This morning, I want to give an update on the Operation Epic Fury, which is an appropriate name because we are absolutely obliterating them. Over the past 3 weeks, we've been hitting Iran's military capabilities at a level that few people have ever seen before. People never knew there was such a capability. We're the strongest military anywhere in the world by far. I built it during my first administration, and I used it during my second administration. Unfortunately, because I'd rather not have to use it. But it's a display of force and precision and skill like nothing the world has really witnessed, although you got a pretty good witnessing of it in Venezuela also. And that was a smaller version of what we're doing now. We're crushing their missiles and drone stockpiles, destroying the defense industrial base. We've wiped out their Navy completely, their Air Force completely. We've wiped out a large percentage of their missiles. And the missile launchers, without the launchers, the missiles don't do any good. And we've knocked out probably close to 90% of the launchers, probably more than 90% of the missiles themselves. Between some they fired and more than they fired, we knocked out.
See, I share this stuff with you guys because I don't know how many people understand. Trump and Iran, cut two, please.
We've also destroyed a lot of the factories. We're continuing to do that, but a lot of the factories where they manufacture the drones and the missiles. The drones, too, are way down, but the reason they're down is they go one way and they don't come back, because for the most part, we're shooting them down. But we also are able to, we've really done tremendous damage to the places where they make them. And just so we set the record straight, because I've been watching the Wall Street Journal's fake news and all these stories that get printed like, oh, I want to make a deal. They are begging to make a deal, not me. They're begging to make a deal. And anybody that saw what was happening over there would understand why they want to make a deal.
Now, that's fascinating because publicly, 14 of the 15 points in Trump's offer came out yesterday. And then Iran had a 5-point plan basically saying, no, here's the deal. The only deal we're going to have is you have to pretend that we won instead of you. And so you got to pay us back and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, well, you guys just want to be martyrs. You guys want to go to 72 virgins. You don't want to live long, do you? But Trump says they're negotiating behind the scenes. We'll see what happens. More coming up at the Doc Washburn Show. 101.1 The Answer. 101.1, The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. Or you can sound off and talk back 501-401-1011. You know, the voice guy often says we give you the stories nobody else does. Nobody else is going to be giving you clips from the cabinet meeting press conference today. Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, President Trump, talking about our decisive victories in Iran. Nobody else is going to take the time to chop all this stuff up and give it to you. But I feel it's like it's my duty to do the best I can to give you the best that's available. President Trump on Iran, cut 3, please.
But they say, oh, we're not talking to them. Anybody would know that. And only a total fool. And they're not fools. They're very smart, actually, in a certain way. And they're great negotiators. I say they're lousy fighters, but they're great negotiators. They are begging to work out a deal. I don't know if we'll be able to do that. I don't know if we're willing to do that. They should have done that 4 weeks ago. They should have done it 2 years ago. Or they should have done it when we first came into office, because 2 years ago they had free reign under Biden. Sleepy Joe, worst president in the history of our country. What he allowed to happen to our country at the borders, and even with a thing like this. But not just him. Every president for 47 years, every president should have done this. They should have done it a long time ago, because you cannot give lunatics a nuclear weapon, and they would have had a big one.
But see, Barack Obama and whoever had the marionette strings on Joe Autopen Biden, they didn't care if Iran got nukes. They couldn't have cared less. Now, the problem is most of the mainstream media reporters are hardcore Democrats. So when Trump and Hegseth and Marco Rubio are out there saying these things so pointedly, well, they're hurting feelings of liberal reporters. Yeah, they're getting all up in their feels. All right, let's go with President Trump, cut 4, please.
It stopped really when we did the B-2, but even before that, the Barack Hussein Obama, what he did where he gave them the Iran nuclear deal, gave them free will toward a nuclear weapon. Basically, he chose Iran over Israel and others that didn't want him to do it. But I terminated that deal. Had I not terminated that deal, you would have had a nuclear weapon years ago, and it would have been used, guaranteed. And one of the reasons you know about the guarantee is because their neighbors were sort of like bystanders. They weren't involved very much. They didn't choose heavy sides. They didn't want to, because people were concerned with Iran. There was a big black cloud over the Middle East. They were concerned, but all of a sudden the war starts, and they start shooting at these 5, in particular, 5 countries. They start shooting at Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Oman. They start shooting at them, and everybody was shocked, including us. You know why? Because they're sick, and they had a plan to take over the Middle East. And some of those missiles that were shot at them were locked long before we even started this process. They were locked and loaded and aimed at those countries. They wanted to take over the Middle East, but we happened to come along, so it wasn't so easy.
Did you catch what he was saying there? Because I haven't heard this before. Now, I know that Iran, as soon as we started hitting Iran, they started hitting their Muslim neighbors. Countries that were not at war with Iran. Countries that are just trying to stay out of it. UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, a bunch of these Saudi. And I'm like, good grief, Iran must be nuts. Why are they trying to draw these other Muslim countries into the war against them? I had no idea what the deal was. So I don't know if you noticed, but President Trump just kind of dropped some breaking news there. They had these missiles locked into these targets for all these peaceful Muslim neighboring countries of Iran because they had a long-term plan to take over the Middle East. I didn't know that. But okay, let me put it this way. If you've got a better explanation for why Iran hit peaceful Muslim neighboring countries, come on, man. Jump in, the water's warm. 501-401-1011. Because it didn't make any sense to me. And Trump was like, well, the long-term plan was to eventually hit those countries and take over. And so when we started hitting them, they're like, oh, it's now or never, I guess. Really stupid. Sure didn't work. But that's the only reasonable explanation I've heard. And I wouldn't have come up with it myself. That's for doggone sure. What cut is next? Okay. President Trump on Iran, cut 5, please.
So right now their Navy is sunk in the largest elimination of a foreign Navy that has taken place, maybe ever, but certainly since World War II. Their Air Force is gone. Their anti-aircraft and communications capabilities are totally dismantled. And one of the problems they do have when they deal with us is we deal with people and the people aren't able to communicate with anybody else. So, because all of their leadership has been gone. The first level is gone, and they meant to pick a new level, and they're gone. They're all gone because they didn't make a deal and because they're sick people. They're really sick. They're really sinister, sick people. And if anybody thinks it was okay to have a group of people like this to have nuclear capability, nuclear weapons.
You see, at some point, President Trump was probably like a lot of us, had no idea how demented Muslim worldview is. But he's seen it up close. He certainly saw it up close on September 11th, 2001. I mean, right now, I'm looking at an embedded video of a member of the British Parliament, a guy named Iqbal Muhammad, just losing his mind in Parliament, just breaking down, claiming that banning marriage between first cousins would be Islamophobia because it's part of their culture. Well, Muhammad encouraged it. And so you've had higher rates of infant mortality, high rates of birth defects, lower and lower IQ each generation for 13 centuries. And they're like, yeah, but, Muhammad said it was cool. And don't forget, he's the best example of exemplary human behavior. Oh, did we mention Muhammad said we could have sex slaves too? Yeah, sure. What a great guy. I'm watching another embedded video of Muslims outside City Hall in Philadelphia waving Palestinian flags and lighting American flags on fire. And so the great actor of Hercules fame, Kevin Sorbo, retweets this. Says, anyone waking up yet? It's a good question. All right, let's go to President Trump at the press conference / White House. The press conference / cabinet meeting today in the White House. Cut 6, please.
And if we didn't attack with the B-2 bombers, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks of that, maybe 4 weeks. But between 2 and 4 weeks, they were planning to have a nuclear weapon. If we didn't hit them at that time with the B-2 bombers, and one of the great air raids in history, maybe the greatest, dark at night, no moon, no light, every single bomb hit its mark and just obliterated that place. So it's now buried deep under earth. And it was an amazing thing, but they would have a nuclear, and they would have used it without question. And you know that because why did they shoot all these countries that weren't even really involved with them? They weren't involved. They had no big problems because they're sick, because they want to take over the Middle East, not just Israel.
Exactly. Exactly. And you got people saying, well, they weren't any threat to us because they don't have the missiles that could hit the U.S. yet. Unbelievable. President Trump at today's White House cabinet meeting slash press conference. I guess it's cut 7 now. Yeah, cut 7.
Certainly, Israel would have been the first on their list. They would have used nuclear weapons, a nuclear. You don't need too many of them, but they would have used a nuclear weapon on Israel, and they would have used it on the neighbors, and then they would have come after us. And if we had a weak president, they would have done great damage. But fortunately, you don't have a weak president. I knew what was happening, and I think we've been proven right. You know, they took one missile went 2,500 miles. They supposedly didn't have a missile like that. They had no missile with that capability. But they shot the now famous island that the UK was very afraid to give us because they didn't want to get dragged in. But we don't want to get dragged into their wars either. You know?
Yeah. People keep on saying, this is not what we voted for. We voted against the forever wars. Okay, well, Iran's been at war with us since 1979, and President Trump is intent on bringing that to a close. That's good. President Trump, today's cabinet meeting slash press conference about Iran. Cut 8, please.
One thing we're very disappointed, I'll say it publicly, we're very disappointed with NATO because NATO has done absolutely nothing. And I've always said 25 years ago, I mean, I was somebody that wasn't a politician, but I was always involved in politics and I understood politics. I said 25 years ago that NATO's a paper tiger, but more importantly, that we'll come to their rescue, but they will never come to ours. And I want you to remember that we said this. They didn't come to our rescue. Now they all want to help. When they're annihilated, the other side is annihilated. They said, we'd love to send ships. They actually made a statement, a couple of them, that we want to get involved when the war's over. No, it's supposed to get involved when the war's beginning or even before it begins.
Yeah, I mean, I thought NATO was like a mutual protection kind of thing. Somebody hits one member of NATO, the others jump in and defend. That's not how they're acting. So can you blame him for being disappointed and upset with the other NATO countries? I sure can't. What do you have to cut 8? Oh, cut 9. I'm sorry. President Trump today on Iran, cut 9.
We had the UK say that we'll send, this is 3 weeks ago, we'll send our aircraft carriers, which aren't the best aircraft carriers, by the way. They're toys compared to what we have. But we'll send our aircraft carrier when the war is over. I said, oh, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Don't bother. We don't need it. And we don't need it. And we don't need them. We estimated it would take approximately 4 to 6 weeks to achieve our mission. And we're way ahead of schedule. If you look at what we've done in terms of the destruction of that country, I mean, we're way ahead. Think of it. They have no Navy. And they had good ships. 154 ships have been shot down and are resting very nicely at the bottom of the sea. And we did that in a matter of less than a week.
Seriously. Even the New York Times said a couple of days ago, the war is going a lot better than you realize. And they look for every opportunity they can to put a knife in Trump's back. Even they're like, you know what? We've been pleasantly surprised here. Seems to be going pretty well. All right, more coming up from today's cabinet meeting / press conference dealing with Iran and the fantastic success that we are seeing over there. And yeah, he'll talk about oil prices. We'll get to it. The Doc Washburn Show continues, Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. 101.1, The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. Sound of a Doc back 501-401-1011. Big protest going on outside City Hall in Philadelphia yesterday. And they're chanting, for every U.S. soldier who comes back in a casket, we cheer. You understand what I just told you they said? Coach Tommy Tuberville, U.S. Senator, Alabama. Sorry, I got Africa on the brain. He says, I get crucified every time I say this, but I don't care. The enemy is inside the gates. We cannot allow Islamic jihadists and Sharia law to destroy our country. Yeah, exactly. And we got video now from an Islamic school in Philadelphia where the kids are saying in Arabic, we will chop off their heads. We will lead the army of Allah. We will subject them to eternal torture. So, why do we allow this? I got to save this in my X folder called They're Going to Hit Us Here. So comedian Dave Smith, who I've never heard say anything funny, although he calls himself a comic, he goes on Joe Rogan. This clip just dropped 8 minutes ago. Dave Smith goes on Joe Rogan and argues against taking out the Ayatollah because it might make the Islamists angry. What an idiot. And I've never said otherwise. What a blooming idiot. I got to save this one. This is unbelievable. All right. In the meantime, President Trump had a cabinet meeting / press conference earlier today. Talk about what's actually going on in the war with Iran. Cut 10, please.
Because we have the greatest military in the world by far, nobody even close. So we estimated it would take approximately 4 to 6 weeks to achieve our mission. 26 days in, we're really a lot ahead of schedule. The Iranian regime is now admitting to itself that they have been decisively defeated. They're saying to people, this is a disaster. They know it. That's why they're talking to us. They wouldn't talk otherwise. But they're talking to us because they've got a disaster in their hands. They're defeated. They can't make a comeback. We're free to roam over their cities and towns and destroy all of their crazy nuclear weapons and missiles and drones that they're building. And we're doing that.
And yet publicly they say, oh, no. We're ready for a long-haul war, and Trump has to bend to our will. Again, do they have any idea how ridiculous they sound? How stupid they sound? No, they don't, because they don't know what that means. Anyway, Trump on Iran, cut 11, please.
They now have a chance to make a deal, but that's up to them. And they'll tell you, we're not negotiating. We will not negotiate. Of course they negotiated. They've been obliterated. Who wouldn't negotiate? They are begging to make a deal. We'll see if we can make the right deal. And if they make the right deal, then the strait will open up. Hormuz Strait will open up. And even now, we don't know if there are any mines. They have 22 mine droppers. Think of it. Who would have 22 mine droppers? This is a boat that drops mines. Who has 22 mine droppers? Except for people with very evil intention. So every one of those mine droppers has been struck with the same weapon we used to stop drugs from coming into the United States of America. When we hit those boats, it's the exact same weapon, extremely effective. We have unlimited supplies and extremely effective, but they have no more mine droppers.
And yet publicly they're like, no, we're going to win this thing. Good grief. I guess it's cut 12 now, right?
They now have the chance to permanently abandon their nuclear ambitions and to chart a new path forward. We'll see if they want to do it. If they don't, we're their worst nightmare. In the meantime, we'll just keep blowing them away, unimpeded, unstopped. Well, there's not a thing they can do about it. They can't do anything about it, you know. I tell you, if they could, you'd be hearing about it. You'd be hearing about it. You don't hear anything about it. They can't shoot our jets. We have the best military equipment in the world. No, not even a contest. And you see that with Venezuela. They had other equipment. They didn't have ours. It didn't work.
Wow. This is amazing. And I like the commentary I'm hearing from a lot of people, which is that we are going to get past this. And the price of gas at the pump is going to go back down. And all these Democrats complaining about it sure didn't complain about it when it was higher under Biden. That should tell you something. But so many people have the attention span of a gnat. And as one of our bosses told me years ago, they're not thinking about what you said a few months back. They're listening to what's going on right now. So a lot of times you have to put things into context over and over again, or they might get the wrong impression. All right, more coming up as the Doc Washburn Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. 101.1 The Answer, Doc Washburn Show continue where you sound off and talk back. 501-401-1011. Before we get back to more clips from President Trump. Producer Young Tommy saying, hey, you got some comments on the Facebook live stream. I'm like, oh, okay, let me take a look at this. He said NATO didn't come to the rescue, but he's already said we won the war. Which is it? Both, obviously. It's not like they're mutually exclusive. NATO's being a bunch of wimps. They're being chickens because they're letting, a lot of the countries in NATO are letting the Muslims just take over, so they don't want to upset them any worse than they already are. And obviously, we have completely dismantled Iran's ability to do much of anything. But thanks for the question, Todd. What's the other one? Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson tried to warn Trump not to go to war with Iran for Israel, but he didn't listen. Okay. It's a good thing we're not going to war with Iran for Israel. I think we're tired of Iran and their proxies murdering Americans. I don't know why that doesn't bother some people. Anyway, most likely because he's compromised. Oh, okay. Yeah, so Tucker, who says all Islam means is submission to God, and why would anybody have a problem with that? With his fake laugh, he's not compromised. Oh, okay. And so what else does this guy say? Talk about Trump. He acted ridiculous when asked about releasing the rest of the Epstein files. He's hiding something. I think Israel has him blackmailed. Interesting. Is the Israeli blackmail in the room with you right now, sir? Todd? Young Tommy. Hey, thanks so much for telling me that there were some comments on the Doc Washburn Show Facebook live stream, because we've been talking about so much heavy stuff. We need some comic relief every once in a while. Yes. Okay. No, I appreciate that. All right. Back to President Trump's. I think Israel has him blackmailed. So President Trump, over 20 years ago, banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago when he found out that he was hitting on minor females. And one of the attorneys for a number of the Epstein accusers said several years ago that Donald J. Trump is the only person of any kind of power or influence who ever tried to help Epstein's victims. Yeah. But Israel's blackmailing him. Yeah. Okay. Sure. And the Epstein files, which Biden's DOJ had full access to for 4 years. There's stuff in there about Trump, but they wouldn't release it to hurt Trump. I mean, they try to put him in prison 16 ways from Sunday, but no, forget the Epstein files. Oh, by the way, Governor Sanders is in the news again, and we'll have that coming up here in a little bit, but not in a way she'd like. But, oh well, goes to the territory. Anyway, President Trump today at the cabinet meeting / press conference, cut 13, please.
Think of it. We did the situation in Venezuela. It was a great military operation, getting a very, very dangerous man who's killed a lot of people, forced people into our country. Incredible. He emptied his prisons in Venezuela, empties his prisons into our country. And I hope that charge will be brought at some point, because that was a big charge that hasn't been brought yet. It should be brought. He emptied his prisons into our country and was a major purveyor of drugs coming into our country. And he's now been captured and, I guess be given a fair trial.
Yeah, see, a lot of people don't understand that although President Trump sent our military to extract Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela, at this point, he is subject to the American judicial system. And we'll see what happens. It's very unusual to me. But then again, I'm not an expert on these things. So he's going to get criminal defense attorneys and the whole thing. I wonder if they're giving a public defender. Should you choose if you can't afford? Because he was like a zillionaire, but maybe they didn't let him bring any of it with him. I don't know how that works out. We'll find out. Okay, President Trump from the White House press conference / cabinet meeting today. Cut 14, please.
But I would imagine there are other trials coming because they've really sued him just at a fraction of the kind of things that he's done. Other cases are going to be brought, as you probably know. In the meantime, with Iran, we're going to keep doing what we've been doing, and nobody's a match for the United States, but they're not a match for the United States. It's small potatoes. That's why I'm so disappointed in NATO, because this was a test for NATO. This was a test. You can help us. You don't have to, but if you don't do that, we're going to remember. Just remember this in a number of months from now. Remember my statements.
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing a decapitation thing in Iran. And for all of their public protestations that, no, we don't give up. No, we are winning the war. No. We will not accept Trump's plan. No. Here's our counteroffer. You got to pretend like we won. Pay us back and all this kind of idiots. They don't have any idea how stupid they look. Just idiots. All right, so we got what? One more cut of Trump? Two more cuts. Okay. All right, I didn't realize. So let me see. Cut number 15 is next. Okay, cut 15.
They have an expression, a great expression, never forget, can never forget. So as we end threats to America abroad, we're focused here at home on building the greatest economy in the history of the world. Now, before this started, the Dow hit 50,000, the S&P hit 7,000. Both of those achievements were not achievable. Every one of you, most of you, I guess, said you'll never hit 50,000 during a 4-year period because it was too high a number. Well, we hit it in our first year. And I said, well, now we have to take an excursion to Iran and we have to stop this maniac who's no longer with us.
Exactly. We'll get back to it. Good timing on this, because by the time the elections roll around, gas prices should again be at an all-time low. At least, for the past 30 years. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Okay, one more cut from President Trump at today's press conference / cabinet meeting. Cut 16, please.
The supreme leader wasn't so supreme, no longer with us. It's very sad, but we have to stop him from blowing up the world, blowing up the Middle East, and blowing up our country, and we did that. Frankly, I thought the oil prices would go up more, and I thought the stock market would go down more. It hasn't been nearly as severe as I thought. I think they have confidence in maybe the American president and maybe the people sitting around this table. But Americans filing their taxes this year are receiving record-setting refunds. It's been a very big story. Well, it should be a big story. I don't think you write about it that much, but I speak about it. I speak about it because if I speak about it, at least people hear you don't write about it.
So, those are the greatest hits from today. We started off with Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and a lot of stuff from President Trump. And yet, there are people who just insist on seeing everything through some odd grid and that these successes are not happening. And it's just like, okay. All righty. They have a First Amendment right. Now, never forget this. Whenever you get frustrated when you're arguing politics with people and they're like way out there somewhere and you can't really reason with them, they have a First Amendment right to believe whatever they want to and ignore all evidence to the contrary. Well, no. I'm sorry. No, young Tommy's right. The First Amendment doesn't specifically say that. But in the sense that we have a First Amendment right to freedom of speech and freedom of the press, it doesn't say unless you're delusional. You see where I'm going with this? It doesn't say, well, unless you say something that we disagree with and we're willing to, call you names or whatever. So they have a First Amendment right to believe what they want and ignore all the evidence to the contrary. By extension, Dad, you have the First Amendment right to free speech. That's where I find that. No, listen to me. You don't ever want the government to say, oh, it's against the law to lie. Now, there are plenty of Trump supporters and plenty of conservatives who want the government to tell the mainstream media it's against the law to lie because they refuse to consider the ramifications. What are you going to do if, God forbid, a Democrat ever gets back in the White House and appoints a Democrat attorney general, and you've had a law passed that's against the law to lie, and all of a sudden they want to prosecute you because they say, because you believe boys can't become girls, that's a lie. Well, that boys can't become girls. I know. But Democrats live in an alternate universe. They have an alternative reality. What if they say, if you believe that God created the earth a little over 6,000 years ago in 6 days, well, that's a lie. We got to prosecute you. Well, Doc, I got a freedom of religion. You're the one who wants the government to prosecute people for lying. You and I both know that's the truth. But if they decide it's a lie, what if they say you're dangerous to our national security if you don't believe in climate change, whatever that is? You don't want the government to be able to indict you for, quote, lying, unquote. Now, if you defame somebody and they want to sue you, okay, that's different. I'm glad we had this little talk. Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right, coming up, will they ever be accountable for any of these deep state knuckleheads? And Governor Sanders in the news again, not in a way that she would like, but we'll deal with it. I'm looking forward to it. The Doc Washburn Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. 101.1, The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues, or you can sound off and talk back at 501-401-1011. So Jim Jordan is in the news again, and Jim Jordan, well, a lot of people get frustrated with Jim Jordan because it's like, okay, when will anyone ever be held accountable? And some people are frustrated with Jim Jordan because they don't realize that a member of Congress doesn't really have the legal or constitutional authority to arrest anyone himself. And Jim Jordan can refer people for criminal prosecution to DOJ all he wants to, and it's up to DOJ whether they're going to indict somebody. But anyway, so we have a clip, one more piece of audio today from Representative Jim Jordan on with Sean last night on Fox saying, and again, this is him saying it, not me. Jim Jordan telling Sean on Fox last night that John Brennan is going down.
All right, so the DOJ now has officially requested the Intelligence Committee records related to the former CIA director. What are they looking for here, and what are they likely finding?
Well, just what John said, Sean, is part of this conspiracy to go after President Trump when it all began back in 2016, when they used the dossier to change the intelligence community assessment. But understand what has happened. October 21st last year, the House Judiciary Committee sent a criminal referral letter to the Department of Justice. Then you had the Department of, you had the CIA, Mr. Ratcliffe, send information to the Justice Department, and ODNI Director Gabbard also sent information to the Justice Department. And now we have the Justice Department specifically asking the House Intelligence Committee for the transcripts when Mr. Brennan testified. That means, as John said, this is heating up down in Florida, where Jason Quinones is the U.S. attorney there. And maybe there's ultimately going to be some accountability for Mr. Brennan. And again, I underscore, this is when it all began. They changed the intelligence community assessment from December of 2016, when it said there was no conspiracy, no collusion between Trump and Russia to influence the election. 1 month later, they changed it, and they did it at the urging of John Brennan. And he lied to us about it when we were deposing him last Congress. And that's why we sent the initial criminal referral letter that we sent in October. So, I think it's getting serious here.
Well, again, I was telling you last fall about this federal grand jury impaneled Fort Myers, Florida, starting middle of January this year. We're going to be looking into all this stuff. And I'm with you. Wake me up when somebody gets indicted. But I would be remiss in my duty if I didn't tell you that they're still talking about it. Okay? Now, having said that, we got to tell you a little bit more on Iran. The great Mike Doranimated over on Twitter, over on X, saying about 2 weeks ago, Mojtaba Khamenei, Iran's new supreme leader, opened a premium account on X, okay? Through this account, he is encouraging the continuation of the war and revenge against the United States. In other words, he's inciting violence. It goes without saying that Mojtaba Khamenei himself, as well as the IRGC, are under sanctions. A premium account on X costs about $8. So why isn't X disclosing from which bank account the supreme leader bypassed U.S. sanctions and managed to transact in dollars? X may be inadvertently facilitating payments in violation of sanctions. Well, I certainly don't think Elon Musk would not want to do that, do you? At the same time, Mike says he would recommend that X review all accounts associated with Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the IRGC that it maintains to ensure they're not being used to circumvent sanctions. Buddy, I like the way this guy thinks. I mean, not even gonna lie, fam. For real. That's pretty strong. Okay, now, the Russiagate accountability situation. We'll tell you real quickly what Sundance is saying over there on the conservativetreehouse.com. DC uses a system of decades-long constructed silos to control and ultimately hide information adverse to the interests of the DC system itself. Put another way, people within our government have constructed layers of systems to hide the corruption that takes place. This silo system is challenging to understand, but thankfully, many more people have started to comprehend how it works. Constitutional separation of power mechanisms has been weaponized by the corrupt actors, as we outlined in the example yesterday of Adam Schiff hiding the transcript of the intel community's Inspector General Michael Atkinson. All of us have been frustrated to hear politicians and the legislative branch talk about sending criminal referrals to the Department of Justice, yet nothing happens. Part of this is created by stakeholder equities, specific ownership of the underlying documents that do not accompany the referral, locked in a non-compliant silo. The intelligence community is notorious for classifying and hiding the evidence of wrongdoing. We talked about that with the FBI a while back. Prohibited access. We talked about that. Without the direct and specific evidence, and without an aligned intent from the receiver, the referral itself is more of a legislative fundraising narrative than an actionable event, a pitch without a catcher, and sometimes even without a ball. You're not alone in your frustration. However, you might remember Conservative Treehouse providing a very specific outline of how a key position within government could be used to change things. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, shutting down the intel community from hiding evidence, is key. An honest and truthful arbiter of intelligence is a paradigm shift in the DC system. It's also a threat. With the executive branch, DNI Tulsi Gabbard declassifying purposefully hidden intelligence equities in combination with the legislative branch providing source material from their own silo equities, what you get is an unimpeded flow of information to the Department of Justice. Now, what I will do is add the rest of this article to the podcast this evening when we upload the audio. Coming up, Governor Sanders in the news again, and not in a way that she would like, after the bottom of the hour break here on 101.1 The Answer. 101.1 The Answer, Doc Washburn Show continues, or you can sound off and talk back, 501-401-1011. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders in the news again. Let's see, Mike Wickline. I remember Mike Wickline. He was the reporter for the Arkansas Democrat Gazette that I would mix it up sometimes with 4 years ago when I was in the Republican primary running for governor against Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Anyway, Mike Wickline has his article entitled Arkansas Conservatives Committee Reports Spending $307,730 on Kim Hammer campaign ads. Well, let's take a look at this. The Arkansas Conservatives Independent Expenditure Committee that is promoting State Senator Kim Hammer of Benton in the Republican runoff race for Secretary of State spent more than $307,000 on a television media buy last week, the committee reported in its latest campaign finance report. Well, it sounds like they're desperate. I don't think they'd be spending that kind of money if they didn't feel like they needed it. Very few people show up to vote in a runoff race. I mean, I'm going to, and I'm certainly not going to vote for Kim Hammer. Brian Norris is the guy who's supporting the president on getting rid of the election machines, the voting machines. But anyway, be that as it may. The committee, Wickline's got a scoop here. I knew it, but a lot of people didn't. Wickline's got a scoop. Gee, I wish more people would read the Demgas. The committee is led by Chris Caldwell. Who might you ask is Chris Caldwell? Well, he's senior advisor to Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders' re-election run and served as campaign manager for her successful 2022 gubernatorial bid. So that was a guy that would watch all my Facebook Live stuff I did when I was challenging her in the primary. Sounds like a great guy. Never met him. Sanders, a Republican who I did meet one time, has endorsed Kim Hammer over Toro project manager Brian Norris of Batesville in Tuesday's Republican runoff for Secretary of State. You know, Toro is a lawn equipment company that has been around now for 112 years, so they must be doing something right, including hiring a good man, 21-year veteran like Brian Norris. Anyway, in a report filed this week with the Secretary of State's office, this Arkansas Conservatives Committee reported raising a total of $415,000 in contributions from New Generation of Little Rock and spending over $420,000 through March 21st, leaving a balance of negative $5,000. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. So how are they going to balance the budget if they're going into the red? But Mike Wickline is not through. He's a reporter. So this New Generation entity that contributed $415,000 to Arkansas Conservatives, they're a 501c4 nonprofit that filed with the Secretary of State's office May 2023, according to office records, which show the group's directors are Kevin Crass, Shane Henry, and Jonelle Caldwell. Wonder what we know about them. New Generation contributed $115,000 to the Arkansas Conservatives Independent Expenditure Committee February 27th and contributed $300,000 to the committee on March 18th, according to the committee's report. I wonder if Governor Sanders' senior advisor is such a big deal in this campaign to try to get Kim Hammer elected Secretary of State. And he's so tight with the governor. I wonder why she waited until after the primary to endorse Kim Hammer. He's been running for this thing since January of last year. She finally got around to it. Better late than never, I guess. I don't know. The committee reported spending about $324,000 on text messages. Oh, and there have been a lot of lies in those text messages. And a TV media buy since March 14th, including almost $308,000 with medium buying LCC of Columbia, Ohio. I don't think, Mike. You disappoint me, brother. Columbia, Ohio. Mike. I don't think there is a Columbia, Ohio. There's a Columbus, Ohio. Yeah. But an unincorporated community. Come on, man. Give me a break. An unincorporated community that doesn't even have its own zip code. Okay. I think Mike probably meant Columbus, Ohio, but I guess newspapers don't have proofreaders anymore. Let's try again. Let's use the name of the real city now. The committee reported spending about $324,000 on text messages full of lies and a TV media buy since March 14, including spending almost $308,000 with medium buying LCC of Columbus, Ohio on the media buy March 19th. The committee reported spending about $96,000 on text messages and live telephone calls through the March 3rd primary election. Among other things, the committee promoted Secretary of State candidates Millard County Judge Kathy Hardin Harrison of Texarkana and Hammer over Norris in the primary. So does that mean that the lady who was in the race was in there to keep Brian Norris from getting over 50%? No, when you think about it, the same nonprofit was paying for advertising for Kim Hammer and Kathy Hardin Harrison in the same race. What else am I supposed to think? Norris and Hammer advanced to Tuesday's runoff election because they were the top two vote getters in the primary, and no candidate won a majority of the votes. Well, I guess putting Ms. Harrison in there made sure that happened. In contrast, the Republican Patriots of Arkansas Independent Expenditure Committee that's been promoting Norris' candidacy reported raising a total of about $228,000 and spending a little over $128,000 through March 21st, leaving a balance of about $104,000. The committee, led by Lori Justice of Alexander, I know her, she's good people, reported receiving $122,000 in total contributions from businessman John Bailey of Little Rock in February and March. Never met him. Hear nothing but good stuff about him, though. And receiving a $100,000 donation February 17th from the American Voter Integrity Initiative, a group that advocates for paper ballots over voting machines. Oh, AVII, yeah. Led by Colonel Conrad Reynolds. Yes, indeed. Well, they're also good people. In the interest of full disclosure. That's my opinion. You're entitled to it. The Republican Patriots of Arkansas Committee reported spending about $33,000 with Gray Media Corporation of Alexander and PMI Inc. of Marianna, Florida from March 4th to the 21st, spending about $95,000 on text messages and ads through March 3rd. That's good. In the Republican primary, Republican Patriots of Arkansas endorsed 13 candidates for state and federal offices, including Brian Norris. And they have, Senators Ron Caldwell of Wynn and Brian King of Green Forest, according to the group's website. Brian Norris has described himself as the political outsider. Ain't that the truth, brother? He's pitched voters on his support for paper ballots. Actually, my quick line, it's hand-marked paper ballots. as a more secure voting method over machines and his plans to remove parking spots for lobbyists near the Capitol. Oh, my goodness. He's just declared war then. Yeah, legislators aren't going to like their lobbyist buddies not having parking spots near the Capitol building. That's a shot across the bow. I didn't even know he'd said that. He's also highlighted his military experience, having served in the U.S. Army for 21 years. Yeah, that's good. Hammer has asked primary voters to look to his legislative record and experience, saying his steady hands needed as Secretary of State. Let's see, legislative record. Oh, yeah, Kim Hammer. Yeah, he's the guy that sponsored that bill that would have given foreigners a leg up over native Arkansans in driving big rigs. Yeah, and would make it harder for citizens to propose ballot initiatives to do things like outlaw all abortions. But they say he's pro-life. Meanwhile, Hammer reported raising more in contributions than Norris from March 4th to 20. Well, whatever. It just goes on and on and on. Let's see. Contributors of 3,500 to Hammer from March 4th through 21st. This might be interesting. Include David Stickler of Osceola, the Senate Leadership PAC, the Arkansas Conservative Legislative PAC, the Republican Party of Saline County PAC, Attorney General Tim Griffin's Jobs and Growth PAC, and David Hendricks, Dana Hendricks, Yvonne Hendricks, and Doug Hendricks of Benton, according to Hammer's report. Other contributors of 3,500 to Kim Hammer during this period include the Associated Industries of Arkansas PAC, Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce PAC. Now, wait a minute. The Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce sued the legislature when they overrode Asa Hutchinson's veto of the bill they put out there to try to protect people from transgender stuff. And Kim Hammer takes money from the pro-transgender State Chamber of Commerce? Really? Oh, but you're pro-life, aren't you, Kim Hammer? Yeah. The Arkansas Pharmacists PAC, the Patients First PAC, Governor Sanders' Team SHS PAC, and the AGC Better Roads PAC, according to Kim Hammer's report. How about that? Oh, wait. Former Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson of Rogers contributed $1,000 to Kim Hammer's campaign during that period. Again, the same Asa Hutchinson who vetoed the bill to try to give victims of that transgender surgery some kind of legal ability to sue the butchers. That's fascinating, man. That's really interesting. Politics makes a strange bedfellows, doesn't it, Senator Hammer? No, he could have come on the show anytime he wanted to. He doesn't want to talk to me, and I understand why. Because I won't play patty cake with him like KTV's so-called reporter, Daniela DeHogany. No, there's some connections there. No, I don't want to talk about it right now. No, there's a reason that she gets scoops from the governor's office. No, I just put it that way. Anyway, we'll try to squeeze as much breaking news in as we can between now and the end of the show at 6. The Doc Washburn Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. 101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues, or you can sound off and talk back. 501-401-1011. What's this breaking news? John Solomon over at justthenews.com. U.S. intercepted Ukraine government messages discussing plot to route money to Biden re-election. Oh, really? Gee, I wonder why Zelensky was so disrespectful in that Oval Office meeting a year ago. Anybody remember that? Even Lindsey Graham criticized Zelensky after that meeting. But, mark your calendar on that. Anyway, here's what he says. John Solomon and Jerry Dunleavy over at justthenews.com. U.S. intelligence intercepted Ukrainian government communications discussing a plot to route hundreds of millions of American tax dollars earmarked for clean energy in the war-torn country and move them to the United States to enrich then-President Joe Biden's 2024 re-election campaign and the Democrat National Committee, according to a declassified intelligence report summarizing the intercepts that was obtained by Just the News. Well, now, wait a minute. If it's declassified, we ought to all be able to get a hold of it somehow or another, right? Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard recently learned of the intercepts and has asked the U.S. Agency for International Development officials to scour for records to see if the plot actually was carried out and whether a criminal referral should be made to the FBI. Okay, now wait. Hang on. Hold your horses. Shouldn't the criminal referral be made to the DOJ itself? Because the FBI, although it's part of the DOJ, doesn't actually indict anyone. It's the Federal Bureau of Investigations, not the Federal Bureau of Indictments. Just so you know. Officials said Gabbard's team has not found substantive evidence that the intercepted allegations were thoroughly investigated during the Biden administration, and the communications are not believed to be tied to Russian disinformation efforts. The declassified report is a summary of raw intercepts from U.S. spy agencies in late 2022 concerning the alleged plot, and officials who have reviewed the files said there seemed to be a lack of curiosity to investigate such an explosive allegation of foreign interference in the U.S. election. Gee, I wonder why. The declassified summary of the intercept stated the Ukrainian government and unspecified U.S. government personnel through USAID in Kyiv reportedly developed a plan that would provide hundreds of millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund an infrastructure project for Ukraine that would be used as a cover to send approximately 90% of funds allocated to the DNC to fund Joe Biden's reelection campaign. The report added they were confident the project would be funded initially, even though at some time in the future the project would be disapproved as unnecessary. At this time, the money would already be allocated and impossible to return or use for a different purpose. The intercepts mentioned 2 American subcontractors as possible recipients of the money that would eventually be moved to Democrat coffers. The names are included in still classified raw spy data, but were redacted from the declassified report obtained by Just the News. So it goes on, but if it's true, wouldn't it be nice if somebody was held accountable? All right, now, have you ever heard of Monty Python? You know who John Cleese was? He was the tall guy that was the one of the, well, they're all funny, but anyway, he's responding to something over there in the UK. People are calling it racist to criticize Islam, as if Islam is a race. And John Cleese, of all people, says the British cultural heritage is based on Christ's teaching. And Christ's teaching is not about acquiring power. read the Beatitudes. And of course, for those of you scoring at home, the Beatitudes are in the Gospels. Most tellingly in the Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus is saying, blessed are. Anyway, John Cleese of Monty Python fame continues, well, he did Faulty Towers too. The Quran's teaching is all about acquiring power, killing infidels, and imposing Islam on everyone. That's why the British tradition is vastly superior and more respectful of human dignity. Now then, that having been said, we got people out there saying, I don't understand how we ended up with John Cleese of Monty Python fame as defender of the Christian faith, while King Charles goes on and on and on about Islam. See, the King of England is supposed to be protector and defender of the Christian faith, specifically the Church of England. But King Charles, going decades back to when he was still Prince of Wales, has always said such wonderful, nice things about how wonderful and nice Islam is. Whereas John Cleese of Monty Python fame, who admittedly did the movie The Life of Brian, which a lot of people viewed as sacrilegious, he's out there saying, now, wait a minute. The United Kingdom is supposed to be Christian. You never thought you'd see it, did you? It's kind of like when a guy like Bill Maher all of a sudden is making sense. Anyway, we got to run to it. Okay, Dave Ellswick tomorrow morning, 7:06. See you tomorrow, 4:06. God willing, 101.1 The Answer.